when people say I've got money in the bank, I say, well, once you put it in the bank, it's not your money anymore. It's the bank's money. They'll give it to you if they feel like it.
What if the upcoming economic crash could redefine the future for an entire generation? Prepare for Jim Rickards revealing insights on how this crash could change everything. This isn't just about financial figures, it's about a shift that could affect us all in ways we can't overlook. Jim Rickards, a well-known economist and financial expert, has been warning about the current state of the economy. He believes that even though the stock market hasn't collapsed yet, we're already in a recession. This might sound surprising because many people associate a recession with a sharp drop in the stock market. But Rickards is pointing out that the economy can be in trouble even if stocks are still up. Jim Rickards has been keeping a close eye on what's happening with Wall Street and the Federal Reserve. Do you know what he noticed? He noticed something interesting. Many people on Wall Street have been expecting the Fed to make a pivot. They thought the Fed would stop raising interest rates and might even start cutting them. The idea was that if the Fed lowered interest rates, borrowing money would be cheaper, which could boost the economy and be good for the stock market. But things didn't go as Wall Street expected. Instead of pivoting, the Fed kept raising interest rates until July 2023. This was a bit of a surprise because usually when the economy shows signs of slowing down, or when inflation is under control, the Fed might pause or even reduce rates. But in this case, they kept pushing rates higher. Rickards explains that the Fed's decision to continue raising rates is tied to its main goal: controlling inflation. Inflation, where prices rise for everything, has been a major problem. The Fed has been trying to bring it down by making it more expensive to borrow money, which in theory should reduce spending and slow down price increases. However, this approach also has its risks. Higher interest rates can make it more expensive for businesses to borrow money to expand and for people to take out loans for things like homes and cars. If rates go too high, they could slow the economy too much, leading to fewer jobs and less growth. Wall Street had hoped that the Fed would see the risks of higher rates and decide to ease off, but that hasn't happened yet. Rickards points out that this disconnect between what Wall Street expected and what the Fed actually did has created uncertainty. Investors don't like uncertainty because it makes it harder to predict what will happen next, which can cause the stock market to become more unstable. Jim Rickards has some strong opinions about the Federal Reserve. What are those opinions that may be helpful? Another thing is that he's not afraid to share them. According to Rickards, the Fed is often behind the curve, which means they're always slow to react. He believes that by the time the Fed makes a move, like raising or lowering interest rates, everyone already knows what's going to happen, making their actions feel almost irrelevant. Rickards argues that the Fed isn't as powerful as people think. In his view, the Fed is like a big ship that's slow to turn. By the time it responds to an economic problem, the situation has already changed. This delay makes its decisions less effective and sometimes even counterproductive. He suggests that the Fed's actions are more reactive than proactive, meaning it responds to things after they've happened rather than preventing them in the first place. One of Rickards' main concerns is inflation, which is when prices keep going up over time. He believes that inflation hasn't decreased as much as the White House or other officials say. In fact, Rickards thinks inflation is sticking around and is harder to control than most people realize. He thinks it's not just a temporary issue that will go away on its own. Instead, it's something that has become embedded in the economy. Rickards points out that inflation is driven by more than just numbers and statistics. It's also influenced by behavioral psychology and the supply chain. Behavioral psychology refers to the way people's expectations and actions can actually fuel inflation. For example, if people expect prices to keep going up, they might start buying more now to avoid paying higher prices later. This increased demand can drive prices up even further, creating a vicious cycle. Another crucial factor is the supply chain. The supply chain is how goods move from producers to consumers, and if there are any disruptions like delays in shipping, shortages of materials, or labor issues, prices can go up because there's less of something available. Rickards believes the supply chain problems are still a big deal and are contributing to the ongoing inflation. Rickards believes that the Fed's usual methods, like changing interest rates, aren't enough to deal with this deeply rooted inflation. He suggests that because the Fed is slow to act and often misses the root causes of economic problems, they're not as effective in controlling inflation as they should be. Rickards warns that this ongoing inflation could continue to reduce the value of money, making daily life more costly for everyone. He criticizes the idea that temperation is just a temporary problem, and argues that it's something we'll have to deal with for a while, especially if the Fed doesn't take more decisive and timely action. Jim Rickards has some serious concerns about the state of the national debt in the US. He explains that the national debt, which is the total amount of money the government owes, is at its highest level in history when compared to the country's GDP. GDP measures all the goods and services produced in the country. And when the debt is much larger than the GDP, it's a sign that the country might be in trouble financially. Inflation is one of the key issues Rickards points to. Inflation happens when prices go up, which reduces the purchasing power of money. In other words, the money in your pocket doesn't go as far as it used to. This is exactly what people are experiencing now. This kind of inflation can be really tough on households, especially those that are already living paycheck to paycheck. But according to Rickards, the situation is likely to get worse. He warns that we're only seeing the beginning of the economic pain. The factors driving up prices, such as supply chain disruptions, energy shortages, and increased demand for goods, aren't going anywhere anytime soon. In fact, they could continue to drive prices even higher. One reason Rickards is so concerned is that the tools typically used to fight inflation, like raising interest rates, could actually make the situation worse in this particular case. Higher interest rates might cool down the stock market or reduce inflation, but they could also slow down the economy further, leading to job losses and more economic hardship. It's a bit like being stuck between a rock and a hard place. The solutions to one problem could end up making another problem worse. Simply, what Jim Rickards is saying is that the current economic situation might feel a bit like the 1970s, with inflation making life more expensive and the economy not doing as well as it appears. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning of a major shift that could redefine everything. Well, now, are you ready to face the future shaped by Jim Rickards' predictions? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more finance-related content, and ring that bell so you're always up to date with the latest news. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.